Hello, welcome to the Heath-Inn Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all, but sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. Getting started today, the last day of June 30th, 2014. And it made me smile to hear my little voice at the intro that the last word of that sentence was be, where you want to be. And that's really, really important. I wonder what kind of subconscious information we can get from that. I'm going to have a very special guest with us today, June Stoyer, and I will introduce her in a moment. I put on Facebook a quote, and this is coming from 60 or more years ago, so this was known information. Maurice Maeterlinck, who wrote The Life of the Bee, said, "If the bee disappeared off the face of the earth, man would only have 4 years left to live." And that's really very heavy for a person who was a playwright, poet, essayist, and awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1911, and his work was all about life and death. And it is about life and death, and especially when we talk about pesticides. June Stoyer, who is the executive producer of the Organic View radio show, the Clean Energy View radio show, the Neonicotinoid View, co-hosted with Tom Theobald, and producer of the NLP View radio show, hosted by Donna Blinston. So she is really speaking out, an advocate of bees and helping the environment. There is a long list of credits to her name on the announcement page on Homeopathy World Community. Social media measurement expert and CEO of Cred.com, Andrew Grill, announced that June Stoyer is in the top 1% of influencers on social media. She also maintains a consistent clout score of 70. Hey, don't pay attention to that. Clout. So please do visit www.theorganicview.com for more information. She is my good friend, a New York native, born on Long Island, and knowledgeable about organic farming. And she's going to do a little bit more introduction of herself. And I almost feel like saying, June, what is the main theme of your message?
Well, I think the main theme of the message is accountability. I think each one of us has a responsibility for what we do as far as the environment is concerned, but also the corporations, the government, it's everybody. I mean, it's a global responsibility. So this isn't just an American issue. It's not just a European issue. It's a global issue.
Beautiful. And we do see in other parts of the world where they are taking responsibility. They are making laws and banning these pesticides and creating environments and habitats for wildlife. So tell us a little bit more about how you got involved with the pollinator protection.
Sure. Debbie, thank you so much for having me on your show today. And I also want to say thank you for all the wonderful support that you've given me, you've given to the beekeepers, the different advocates, as well as the scientists who are critical to the fight to ban these pesticides. Basically, what I'd like to do is explain what a neonicotinoid is. A neonicotinoid is a systemic pesticide that is absorbed through the plant's vascular system. And it can either be applied as a seed treatment or as a foliar application. Now, what is interesting is that by design, they are meant to kill insects, point blank. However, with the honeybee is not trying to eat the plant. It's just trying to collect the nectar and the water. And that's where primarily the problem began. Now, back in 2010, a Dutch toxicologist named Dr. Henk Kennekes published a book called A Disaster in the Making. He was initially the whistleblower that started talking about all of this stuff. And then what followed was there's something that's referred to as the infamous leaked memo that beekeeper Tom Theobald, who's become a good friend of mine, basically talked about, or he was discussing this memo, and it was about the registration process for clothianidin, which is a systemic pesticide. And basically the EPA did not follow its own protocol as far as registration for this chemical. And Tom, I guess through Freedom of Information Act, started following all this very carefully because he started noticing the decline in his own bees. And at this point, he's really become a very strong advocate as far as honeybee protection as well as other pollinator protection. So that's kind of where it started. And at this point, we have worked with a number of different scientists and advocates. One of my good friends, his name is Walter Hoffaker. He's the president of the European Professional Beekeepers Association, as well as the president of the German Beekeepers Association. And he, along with many, many other advocates, have helped pass a partial ban on 3 neonicotinoids, clothianidin, imidacloprid, and thiamethoxam, that went into effect basically this past December. So that was a huge, huge victory. And so at this particular point, that has been put into effect, but we're trying to push through a ban in the United States. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And unfortunately, industry is saying, well, there isn't enough scientific evidence.
So that's what's holding us. That's what's holding us up. They're saying that we don't have enough evidence.
Well, the thing is that we do have enough evidence because there's more than just one scientist. You have, for example, Dr. Dave Goulson, who has not only published research that proves the impact on the bumblebee, which is also a very important pollinator, but you have so many scientists that have done a tremendous amount of research. It's just, the bottom line is that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they're trying to prolong this for as long as they can.
Would they want to prolong being able to use these toxic pesticides? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the thing is, they're basically continuing the sale of these chemicals, but we're starting to see more and more action in America. For example, in certain pockets of the United States, towns are becoming more aggressive. The activists and pollinator advocates are asking the retailers, for example, not to sell these chemicals. And people are actually educating their own neighbors and telling them, look, these are gardening products that have the neonicotinoids in the product. Please don't use them. So that's something that's been of tremendous value. So, we've come a long way, but, we still, when we have the ban in effect, then it's really going to make a significant difference.
Right. So do you feel that it's going to be more than the scientists and the beekeepers, but it's going to be up to the general public? And I don't know actually the number. I know I did a show earlier on home gardening and garden hobbyists, and it's one of the top hobbies in America. And even today, more and more people are trying to start their own little home gardens. The people who want to be getting free of pesticides and GMOs, they're planting organic gardens. And so, do you feel it's going to take the general public to make the difference?
Of course. I think the public can make a significant difference. When it comes to doing anything, the power is really with the people. If the people are passionate enough, they can make a change at any given time. It's just that a lot of people still don't understand that these chemicals are the most toxic chemicals to penetrate the environment. I remember last year on my birthday, and my birthday happens to be in June 18th, I remember going to a local garden center, and there was a gentleman that was asking the gal at the register for different garden chemicals. And one of the products that he asked for, I don't want to mention the name, but he asked for this particular product, and I said to him, I said, sir, that's really toxic to the bees. And his response to me was, well, I have other things in my yard that the bees can eat. And, that's not...
You're talking about when a woman went to the garden store and wanted some kind of a pesticide like Roundup? No, not Roundup. Roundup isn't.
Roundup is not a systemic. No, okay. He happened to ask for a particular product that does contain neonicotinoids.
Okay.
And I said to him, look, this is a very toxic product for bees. Can you use something else? And
right.
His response to me was, well, I have a whole bunch of stuff that the bees can eat. And that was his response to me. And it's frustrating because it doesn't matter how much information is out there. Personally, I've always felt that until something becomes personal, people are not going to do as much as they can. And that's unfortunate. I mean, it doesn't matter what the issue is. When it becomes personal, then people will start paying attention and doing whatever it is that they have to do. Whether it's, they are finding that maybe it's a health issue, or maybe it's an environmental issue, whatever the case may be. When it becomes personal, that's when people typically start taking action.
Right. I guess people have not been educated that a fundamental basic concept that I acknowledge is whatever you do to the environment, you're doing to yourself. And, when you do get sick, you're going to start to look for what was it. And then you start to find the trail. You try to trace what was it that caused the illness, not only to the environment, to the insects, to the loss of why are my trees not getting pollinated, my fruits not bearing, my blooms not bearing fruits. I mean, these are all things, and they're going to look for answers, which they've been doing for the last decade or so, saying it's the mites or saying it's electromagnetic fields and many other reasons. But to actually take action and protect our nature, and that whatever we are doing to the environment, we're doing to ourselves. And that's my basic premise.
Oh, I completely agree, Debbie. When it comes to these chemicals, the interesting thing is that the manufacturers that are pumping out these chemicals, the actual people that are producing them, that are operating the machines, whatever, they are not absolved. These chemicals will affect their own families. Nobody has any type of escape card, if you will.
Right.
One particular chemical, clothianidin, for example, I think the half-life is 19 years. It's 19 years that the stuff stays in the soil. And furthermore, the sublethal effects are quite serious. It's mobile in groundwater, and according to Dr. Tenekes, there was a paper that he published in regards to dose-time ratio, which proved that over it didn't really matter what the time frame was, but once you reached that dosage, death was guaranteed. And if any of the listeners are interested in that particular interview, I do believe if they do a search on the Organic View, it should come up. But it's also, I do believe there's a video on YouTube about it. But that was a very, very interesting interview that I did with Dr. Tenekes. And industry has not debated, much less brought any attention to that particular research. And I also want to mention, Debbie, that in regards to Varroa, which that's all we hear is Varroa, Varroa, Varroa.
Right.
In Australia, there has been no documentation of Varroa being evident in Australia. And they are sustaining the same type of bee die-offs that we have here in America. Just recently, or actually, let me take a step back. Earlier this year, the biggest crop to be pollinated was the California almond crop. During that pollination period, there were, and the totals have not come in, but this was due to tank mixing and just the use of different pesticides while the bees were out there, which is kind of baffling. But they sustained losses of 475,000 colonies, not just bees, but colonies. So that was huge, and unfortunately never made mainstream media. It was information that was disseminated throughout the beekeeping community, activist groups such as yours, but it didn't make the front page of the Daily News or anything. And the thing is that this is a threat to our food security.
So are you saying that the California almond farmers brought in their annual pollinators, the beekeepers, to come in with their bees and pollinate their flowers so that we could enjoy our delicious almonds? And during that time, those beekeepers lost 475,000 bee colonies by the toxins that were in the fields of the orchard farmers?
I did a very interesting interview with Bill Rhodes, who's a commercial beekeeper out of Florida. He, from what I understand, is the largest producer in the state of Florida of honey. And I also interviewed another fellow named Jeff Anderson, who's a very well-known commercial beekeeper. Now, from what I understand from what they discussed or what they explained was when they're mixing these different chemicals, basically the whole label is, well, the expression goes, the label is the law. So when they're following the directions, basically they follow the directions accordingly and everything's supposed to be fine. However, it's a little ambiguous, and if you have an opportunity, or if the listeners would like to listen to that interview, it is available along with a companion article on the organicview.com. But it's very, very interesting to listen to what these folks are talking about. And the bottom line is it was unnecessary. They should not be applying any type of pesticide while the bees are out foraging. Now, there's certain times, either in the evening or if they could at least give the beekeepers notice, that would help tremendously, but that was not the case. Now, what happened in Australia was pretty much the same thing. Australia sustained losses about of the same magnitude. And once again, it did not make mainstream media. So this is a problem. These are disasters that should be the number one concern of everyone out there in the public. At the end of the day, Debbie, you can grow your own food, I can grow my own food, but a large portion of the population cannot.
Right.
A lot of people depend upon farmers for the foods that they enjoy.
The majority of people do. So Dr. Bob on the chat says that bees fly many miles and your neighbors can be spraying pesticides.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And the thing is that with the systemic pesticides, because they're mobile in groundwater, the bees might go to a puddle, a little tiny puddle, to get some water. So that pesticide might travel through the ground and wind up in that puddle, and that's another way that they can come into contact with these pesticides.
Right.
So
We have to educate everyone. And they're not, obviously, the point you're making is they're not getting educated if the mainstream media is not broadcasting these news messages. I mean, Smokey the Bear used to be on the public broadcasting announcements and say, what did he say? Forest fire. You can stop forest fires, something like that. And we don't have anything that's telling people it's up to you to save the bees, and have a little logo or mascot that's a honeybee that's saying it's up to you to protect them from neonicotinoids.
This is very true. But, there are a lot of advocates, a lot of environmentalists, even the scientific community has done everything that they possibly can, and they are still pressing forward. For example, just recently there was a task force that was put together by a group of scientists that were talking about the impact in very explicit detail how these pesticides not only affect honeybees, but butterflies and other pollinators. It's just that with the honeybees are a big focus for this whole topic, primarily because the honeybees are critical to agriculture. So that's why there is so much attention, not to mention the fact that the beekeepers are the first ones that are going to see any type of devastation with their hives. So if they start seeing massive bee die-offs, of course they're going to start talking about that. And back in the beginning, it was quite interesting. People were talking about different situations with their bees, but nobody really quite knew what was going on. And the thing is that all of the different symptoms that the bees experience are all caused by a weakened immune system. And that's basically what these systemic pesticides do. They weaken their immune system.
Right. And I wanted to get into that a little bit. I put up another little note on Facebook yesterday about homeopathically, and I'm going to look that up for us. It's going to take a second.
Sure.
I wrote nicotinum, which I assume is the basic element or compound structure of the neonicotinoids, covers similar symptoms as tobacco, which is tobacco. That's where it originates, this pesticide. And what some of the symptoms are: violent tonic and clonic spasms, loss of consciousness, sensitivity to light, and with breathing impeded. And can you imagine if, in crude form, these purposely created toxins were sprayed, even in minute amounts, and these sensitive insects came in contact with this substance that is basically going to destroy their nervous system. And it's going to do the same thing to people if we have enough of it also.
Exactly.
Exactly. And people don't understand that that's why when you spray, you wear a mask, you wear guarded, you wear coveralls, and then you wash so that you're not destroying your own immune system and nervous system. So my thought, and this was kind of a follow-up for Amnon, our producer, put on the chat. He put a little note, what about a bee vaccine? And so my thought was, is it possible that homeopathically we might be able to use the homeopathic remedy tobacco or nicotinum, which would counteract these kinds of symptoms for the insects? So if anybody wants to do a PhD study or something, I'm throwing that out.
you would have to consult a toxicologist. I mean, feel free, folks, to reach out to Dr. Hank Tenekes. He's a wealth of information, but he would really need...
You can give us these connections, give us the names of these folks and how to connect with them if anybody's interested.
Dr. Tenekes, you could just send him a tweet on Twitter.
Okay, well, you'll spell his name.
Tennekes.
Okay.
And you should be able to just do a quick search on Twitter, and you should be able to find him.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I want to point out to the listeners is, in regards to the neonicotinoids, the reason that the beekeeping community has been pushing forward with the education, especially with regard to GMO activists, is that neonicotinoids are the companion technology to GMO technology. Because basically, when they take the GMO seeds, they dip them in the neonicotinoids, and that is basically a recipe for disaster.
Oh my gosh, they're just combining the two worst things that you could ever do.
Exactly, and it's something that most GMO activists do not know. You know, they know that, okay, it's a chemical, but they don't quite understand what the core point is, and that's something that I hope that for the folks that are listening, they'll have a better understanding of why this deadly duo truly is, it's just a disaster. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's another reason to ban GMOs.
Yes, I'm fighting for that too. We're fighting a lot of causes that are all interrelated, really, dealing with the environment, our soil, water, and air, which is all being affected by what we put in it, what we spray, what we dump, our waste products, and everything. And so we must be activists, each and every one of us. I think that's the main point of my show, is becoming aware, educated, and taking action. If you don't take action, then you're just letting it happen by other people doing whatever they want. Can I do the EPA definition of neonicotinoids?
Sure.
The neonicotinoids are a class of insecticides with a common mode of action that affects the central nervous system of insects, causing paralysis and death. All of the neonicotinoids were registered after 1984 and were not subject to re-registration. Some uncertainties have been identified since their initial registration regarding the potential environmental fate and effects of neonicotinoid pesticides, particularly as they relate to pollinators. Data suggests that neonicotinic residues can accumulate in pollen and nectar of treated plants and may represent a potential exposure to pollinators. Adverse effects data as well as bee kill incidents have been reported, highlighting the potential direct and indirect effects of the neonicotinic pesticides. And so we're talking about ecological risk assessment during registration review. Will the EPA or other agencies be making ongoing reviews and taking action?
I wish they would. That's the whole purpose of the EPA, to protect the environment, to protect people, to protect everyone that is part of the environment. And that's their job. It's not as though they're doing us a favor. This is what they were created to do, and they're not. The fact is, when you are not following your own guidelines and you're passing through emergency registration for a chemical that has not been proven to be safe, once you let the genie out of the bottle, you can't exactly get it back in. That's why, well, I think that it's great that the White House is saying that they're going to do this and that and the other thing. Okay, last term, 4 GMO crops were deregulated. 4. What about the bees? So to me, I'm at a point where I don't care what somebody's political affiliation is. When their words and actions meet, That's what makes a difference to me. And so far, not one politician has really come forward and fought for the bees. I've yet to see it.
I'm sorry. Can you respond to the latest message out in the news about 6 days ago? Obama announces plan to save honeybees. Did you read about that?
Yes, I did. And once again, when you let the genie out of the bottle, how do you put it back in? 4 GMO crops for last term. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, the number one concern should be the environment. He's got girls. No, it's not like he is absolved from any of this, and it just doesn't make any sense. And so now, what exactly are they going to do? You know, I think it's great, but I just wonder if it's another situation where it's all smoke and mirrors. To me, I want to see what they're doing. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear plans about it. I want to see in action. I want to see the EPA do something. I want to see the EPA actually do its job. That is what we need. You know, we're not asking for anything other than for the agencies that are responsible for doing certain things to actually do what they're supposed to do. That's it. It's not asking for really much of anything.
Right. I'm with you all the way. I think, as I said earlier, we can learn about information, about what's going on around us, but unless we take action, nothing's going to change. And in the CNN article, the last paragraph says, Obama's budget for the next year recommends $50 million for multiple agencies to help boost research, increase the number of acres dedicated to pollinators conservation programs, and boost funding for research on pollinator losses. And to me, personally, I feel like we've got the information out there already, and it's also only a recommendation. It doesn't mean that they have given the funding of $50 million. I think he's giving $500 million to war. I think that needs to be given to peaceful efforts. But
I agree.
Yeah, but I think, you know, talking continually, I mean, he's talking. Let's find out more information. Let's put more research into it. Number one, who's doing the research? Is it going to be funding more of these pesticide industries? Is it going to be funding the beekeepers who know their bees the best? Who is going to get this money, and who has the real inner wisdom and knowledge to solve this problem, which we already seem to have if we would get rid of the toxins in our environment? But respond to me.
Exactly. And actually, Debbie, that's why I created the Neonicotinoid View, which is a special series which focuses on the impact of neonicotinoids. That was the whole purpose. It wasn't because I had any desire to keep producing all these different shows and everything. It's been a tremendous journey with the Organic View, producing different shows. I've done thousands of interviews. I've worked with some of the world's most renowned scientists. And I figured, okay, well, we're not getting anywhere. So they keep saying that there's not enough science. So I bugged Tom Theobald, I think, for about 3 months, and then finally he agreed. And I thought that it was important because he is a commercial beekeeper. He is someone who is well respected in the beekeeping community. And I figured, well, if you have someone such as myself that is asking questions, working with the scientists, and then you have someone like Tom, who's an actual a commercial beekeeper. I mean, it's one thing to be a hobbyist. I'm a hobbyist beekeeper. But when you're a commercial beekeeper and you are responsible for so many bees, that's a huge responsibility. It requires a huge amount of knowledge. And it's not something that you can just read a book and learn overnight. He's been doing this for 30 years, and I have a lot of respect for him. So when we talked about doing this, we said, you know something, let's focus on the science. They keep saying that there's not enough science, and this is 2 years later. They're still saying that there isn't enough science. But yet, if you look at somebody like Dr. Randolph Menzel in Germany, he's a world-renowned expert on the honeybee brain. They do not dispute his research. And even Dr. Dave Goulston, who's somebody that I've interviewed a number of times, and I admire him tremendously. He actually has a wonderful book out that talks about his own journey into the world of bumblebees, which is called The Sting and the Tail. So if you really love bees, he started out off as a butterfly guy, believe it or not, which is interesting because I got involved with this whole journey basically because of my work with butterflies. I was on the county's butterfly garden committee, and I learned about tagging monarchs, collecting the eggs, growing milkweed, so on and so forth. And I was collecting data, and I noticed that there was a decline in the monarchs. So I started asking questions, and I wasn't getting anywhere. It was very frustrating. And when I launched the show, I figured, well, something, I have this show. Let me start talking to people who have similar interests, and maybe I can find out some information about what's going on. And then I became friends with a gentleman named Phil Chandler. He hosts a radio show in the UK, and he is an amazing person to learn from. He is an expert on top bar hives, and he hosts a radio show called The Barefoot Beekeeper. And Phil and I became fast friends, and I learned a lot from Phil, but Phil was also instrumental in just sharing information, and that's what I really love. I really love working with people who are not about their ego, but they're about the cause. They want the information to get out there, and that's what I love about you, Debbie. You are on top of so many different things. You are such an amazing person. You support so many people, and you've been doing this for such a long time, and you really love what you do, and that definitely comes through, especially if you have one conversation or just even a quick chat on Twitter or something like that. You can see that you're really devoted for the right reasons. And the same thing with Phil Chandler. Phil Chandler is just a wonderful, wonderful beekeeper, and I've learned so much from him. And I remember Phil had, he mentioned Dr. Haneke and his book, A Disaster in the Making, and when I read the book, I was mortified. But in the same token, I also realized, okay, I knew that there was something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was something in the water, something in the soil, something in the air. I couldn't put my finger on it because I didn't have the information. And Dr. Haneke's research proved exactly what was causing the global decline of not just the honeybees, but pollinators across the board. And there's a lot of research that's actually coming out of Canada and other parts of the world that's showing the impact on frogs, on birds, and we're still waiting to see what the human health impact studies are. As far as I know, there aren't any at this point, but it doesn't mean that the research is not going on as we speak. But there is a tremendous amount of inclusive information that has been independently published, peer-reviewed. There's no question that it's legitimate research that is fully proves the impact of neonicotinoids. So industry is just repeating itself over and over because they're really just trying to buy time. So we're just hoping that the powers that be pay attention to what the scientific community is saying. And that's really what we have to do. We have to support the scientific community because their research really has proven what these chemicals do and why they need to be banned, not just in Europe, but around the world.
I would love to know what you advocate. Of course, listening to your show and learning and hearing the beekeepers and the experts like Phil Chandler, what they have to say. But I think it's really, really important that people know that they do not have to feel helpless and hopeless about the situation. What can they do as individuals to change the way things are running right now, especially when in the Obama administration, he goes ahead and appoints people in business and industry into governmental positions, like appointing Monsanto VP to food safety for the FDA, or appointing this other Naval Academy superintendent to take care of the vets. in healthcare. I mean, what do they know? They say he's a Naval Academy superintendent, but really he's from, is it Procter and Gamble? He's from an industry point of view, and he really doesn't know anything about healthcare. And so I'd love to know what action items people can do so they do not feel completely helpless in a situation where the main power at the top, which is our government, is sidestepping, hiding, or taking action to protect big industry?
That's an excellent question, and I'm glad that you brought this up because there are a lot of people who are talking about different recommendations, and I don't necessarily agree with some of the recommendations that are out there on some of these websites and blogs and so on and so forth. But having said that, where I feel it should begin is in your home environment. If you have children, explain to the children the importance of bees. Most people do not know the difference between a honeybee and a wasp. They think that the honeybee is like a yellow jacket and it's going to come and sting them, this and that. The honeybee doesn't sting unless the hive is threatened or if its own life is threatened. And that's when they will sting. But the thing is that they'll die after they sting. So that's something that people should know. Number two, wasps do eat other insects. Honeybees do not. So that's another significant difference. So understanding a little bit about honeybees really does help, but just bees in general. Same thing with bumblebees. Bumblebees, if you go onto the Organic View, I have a lot of pictures of bumblebees and all sorts of bees, mason bees, honeybees, butterflies. I've got some ants there. I've got all sorts of stuff. And it's interesting when you observe them. They're not looking to bother people. They just want to do their thing and go about their business. They are not there to antagonize us or interfere with our lives. So I think just educating yourself, educating young people about the importance and what their purpose are is a good place to start. Number two, when it comes to the products that you buy for your home environment, for example, I did an amazing interview with Dr. Thomas Seeley up at Cornell University, who also wrote the book Honeybee Democracy, and he talks about just how honeybees work together. They're quite fascinating, but the interview was actually focused on swarms. A swarm is basically the future of a hive, and unfortunately when people have a swarm, whether it's in a part of their house or in their yard, the first thing that they do is they go to the store and they get some type of chemical and they try to kill it, or they will call an exterminator. What they should actually do is contact their local beekeeping club, or you can contact the local cooperative extension in your county and find out if there are any beekeepers that will come and remove them. Most beekeepers will remove them without a charge. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's very important. Another thing is to pay attention to what you're putting on your property, whether it's a garden chemical that you're using to kill dandelions, which are actually one of the first sources of food for bees. And dandelions, and I'm sure you've talked about dandelions a million times on your show, Debbie, but dandelions are, if you have dandelions, you don't like them, just pull them out. It takes a few seconds to just pull them out.
June, I'm potting my dandelions.
Good.
I want them because I know that they're good for the liver and they're good for healing and they're an excellent source of vitamin C and other good healing nutrition, and I'm trying to grow them.
I actually did a lovely lecture in the New York area in the horticultural societies about dandelions, and I remember doing it for the Long Island Hort Society, and I got a standing ovation. I don't think they were quite expecting what I brought to the table. I figured they probably figured that I was going to go off on how you must have everything organic, this and that, and it was quite entertaining, if I do say so myself. But I help people to understand that dandelions play their part just like every other plant that's out in the environment, and also help people to reconnect with the fact that they are a very valuable plant, not only to bees but to us. So, folks, if you see a dandelion, just pull it out. And if it's something that you care to experience, the dandelion greens are great in a salad. You can actually take the dandelion heads. What I recommend doing is putting them in a salad spinner to just triple wash them, and then put them in the salad spinner to dry them. And then you could basically use pancake mix or whatever you want to create some sort of batter and lightly fry them and almost make like a dandelion fritter, and they're just absolutely delicious. But just keep in mind one thing: they will make you visit the bathroom a little often because it does have that type of effect. But dandelions really are delicious, and it's good that you're growing them. I know a lot of people in different parts of the country, they can't get organic dandelions, and they're paying. I remember one email that I received, a guy was saying that he pays $15.99 for a bunch of dandelions, and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness,
yes,
I'll just send you some seeds, grow it yourself, But getting back to what I was saying, the home environment is very important. Unfortunately, when it comes to many of the plants, trees, and shrubs that are sold in the United States, it's not mandated that they're labeled whether or not they're treated with the systemic pesticides. When I found out about that several years ago, I was horrified. I was one of those gardeners that enjoyed getting my hands into the soil, just connecting with nature, and enjoying the whole gardening experience. I mean, when you're gardening, you want to be out in the dirt. You don't want to be out there, avoiding getting dirty at all possible expenses. You want to be in the dirt. You want to feel those plants. You want to smell that soil. And when I discovered that this was the case, all I thought to myself was, wow, all the work that I've done at so many different public gardens without gloves, all the children that I've worked with where they were touching the soil, how many people have been exposed to these pesticides and had no idea? So that'll be quite interesting as things unfold. But the bottom line is that if you're going to bring new plants into your home environment, buy them organically or try to find a nursery that will ensure that they are grown organically, or even grow them yourself. If it's different plants or flowers, see if you can order the seeds online and start them yourself. So that's a very important thing to remember. Also, when it comes to bees in general, one of the things that I tell people, don't take up beekeeping unless you can make that type of commitment. It's a huge commitment. And financially, it's not cheap to be a hobbyist beekeeper. Some people think that, oh, well, I'll become a beekeeper. Well, it's a big responsibility. It's like adopting a dog. And I often say, well, if you can handle a dog, you can handle bees. And some people are concerned, oh, am I going to get stung? It's kind of like if you do a lot of cooking in your kitchen. I've taught culinary arts years ago, and I have a couple of scars I've cut myself from time to time. Not often, but that's kind of the same thing. If you do decide to pick up beekeeping, you will get stung, but it's not going to be something where you're going to get stung every minute of the day. However, when you decide to make that commitment, the first thing that you should do is take a class in beekeeping, read as much as you can about bee biology, and just constantly learn from other beekeepers, especially try to develop a relationship with somebody who's been a beekeeper for a long time, because the information that you learn is just priceless. But once again, I just want to stress that becoming a hobbyist beekeeper is something that is a huge commitment. You can't just say one day, yeah, I want to become a beekeeper and I'm going to get bees, and think of them as accessories to make your garden look great. No, it doesn't work that way. You're talking about the lives of a hive, and these are beings that can feel love. They can also experience or demonstrate anger. So, you want to keep that in mind. And it's interesting, I just want to bring this up really quickly. Bees were actually used many years ago to predict the weather because they are so sensitive to the Earth's vibrations. So it's quite fascinating once you start learning how complex they are. They're not just some bug. They're very complex beings. Lastly, what I would recommend that you do is just constantly educate yourself. Connect with people that have a vast amount of knowledge, especially with some of the scientific groups, especially this new task force. These folks have nothing to gain. They're not getting paid for any of this. They're taking the time to do what they feel is the right thing to do as far as getting these pesticides banned. And what's interesting is that there's a lot of talk about, oh, well, there are other pesticides that are even more toxic. And that's just really spreading fear. At the end of the day, we need to focus on the task at hand, and that is to get these pesticides banned. There's the only groups that are benefiting from these pesticides being sold truly are the chemical companies. I mean, it's been proven time and time again that organic farming really is the best for agriculture.
We have a question in the chat. Dr. Bob says rotenone, neem oil, marigold, pyrethins, are these safe in the environment, and will they harm or be okay for the bee populations? Neem oil and things. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I know what neem oil is. As far as the interactions with the bees, I would have to consult an entomologist before I gave any type of advice because you'd have to know how much the dosage is, so on and so forth. It's not just a simple cut and dry answer.
Yeah, the organic farmers are using these kinds of pesticides. They call them pesticides, but they are concentrates from marigold and other plants.
No, I understand.
Right, okay, so we're going to have to do a little research on that.
Yeah.
Great. We have a few more minutes left to the show, and I just want to thank you so much for being with me while you're a very busy person, a busy bee, traveling and speaking and doing so many things to help the beekeepers and the environment. If anybody wants to follow June, she is on Twitter and she has her show. Amnon's asking about dishwashing soap. She just sprays her plants with dishwashing soap. I would assume that would be okay. It would be pretty mild. But June, do you have a word on that? What do you use?
It depends upon what the dishwashing soap contains. I mean, are we talking about Vermont soap, Castile bee soap, or are we talking about something like, a commercial product?
Right.
Personally, I don't use any of the commercial dish detergents. I actually use the Vermont soap for my dishes. There's an old remedy where you take chewing tobacco, you soak it, kind of make a tea, and then I don't know what the proportions are, but you take the tea, you take the dish detergent and mouthwash, and then you add that to a gallon of water and you spray that on your vegetables. It's supposed to kill the aphids and whatnot. Honestly, the aphids, if you want to get rid of them, you can just take the spray nozzle on your hose and just spray your tomatoes and whatnot, and it'll knock them right off the plants. But it depends upon what you're looking to do. Once again, as far as any application, the bees are out foraging during the daytime. If you're going to do something, do it when the bees are not out foraging. I mean, they spray for West Nile virus, and they do it during the broad daylight. So, of course, it's going to have an impact on the pollinators. But that's probably the best recommendation that I can make is if you're going to do anything, don't do it during the daytime when the bees are out foraging.
That's a good point to make. And of course, homeopathically, the main concept is to boost the soil. If our body is the soil, if our plants are living in the soil and the water and the air, if we provide the hardiest, strongest soil, That means provide the nutrients that are necessary, the clean water that is necessary, the vitamins and the sunlight and all of those good things. And when you make a recipe, you say made with love. So love is really, really important. And when you're caring and maybe even playing music, classical music, whatever you can do to grow strong plants and trees, they will naturally know how to use their own innate immune system to fend off insects. This is really, in my mind, where we need to go. We need to look at the most natural methods to help build a strong environment, better relationships with everything, because we're all in a symbiotic relationship. Whatever we do to anything else, it's going to come back to us. And if we're thinking only of insecticides, fungicides, pesticides as killing war, then we're not going to be enhancing and benefiting our total world.
Oh, I completely agree. I just want to add one thing. If you're concerned about good soil health, I am a certified master composter, and I can't advocate it enough. When it comes to good soil health, compost is really the perfect amendment. But the thing is that people are kind of lazy. They don't produce their own compost, yet we take so much for waste and we put it out on the curb when you should really be processing it at home. It's not that difficult to compost. It just takes something called effort. People tend to be lazy. They say, oh, it smells, it's this, it's that. If you maintain your compost, you aerate it, it really does not take too much time. And especially if you are an avid gardener or you do care about your home environment, you should be producing your own compost. I can't stress that enough. But
right.
That is something that will ensure, it'll help you to get the very good soil.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, so people don't forget. So what we're asking, become educated, become aware, tell your neighbor, and communicate with those with like minds, because as Dr. Bob in the chat says, malathion is being sprayed in communities all over the place to kill mosquitoes. This is affecting the bees as well. And so we cannot be afraid of insects or afraid of bites. We need to know how to boost our own immune system using whatever it's garlic or something so soft or whatever it is we do, wearing proper clothing, protecting ourselves in how we carry ourselves, and letting children know, like you say, let's identify what's in our environment. What does a honeybee really look like? And it's not going to hurt you. You don't have to be afraid of a sting. And we have homeopathic remedies that can assist anyone who might have an allergic reaction. So there are many things and empowering things at our disposal that will create a better environment all around. So it means being active at home, and you gave us some steps and action items, and in our community with others about creating town laws, protecting the trees, protecting the bees. And I want to let people know what's coming up. Should I just say thank you again, June? I really appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, Debbie, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to talk about something that, I think if I tried to, I don't think I would be able to stop, because I feel so strongly about this. And at the end of the day, people like you and I do not get paid for our advocacy. We do it because it's something that we're passionate about. It's something that we know in our hearts. It's something that we need to do. So, Debbie, thank you for all that you're doing.
Okay, thank you. And I'll let you go. I know that you're on the road.
Thank you, Debbie.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Next up, next Monday, July 7th, I can't really hardly even believe that we're going to be in July, Dr. Saurav Arora, who has the website oddsapier.in in India, who is collecting evidence-based information about homeopathy, will be with us. If anyone has any specific questions, please send them in to homeopathyworldcommunity@gmail.com and let me know what you'd like him to talk about. The following week, Carolyn Vessel, who is the creator of Sufficient C, and there's a link on Homeopathy World Community about this marvelous green tea vitamin C boosting with lysine, an immune boosting drink. She's going to be talking to us about the importance of vitamin C in our regular intake of food. And then following that, I'm not sure if it's July 21st or 28th, the Joshis will be with us. Anybody who has ever listened to them speak and studied the sensation method of homeopathy, this will be a very exciting show. On August 4th, Jeremy Scher is going to call in talking about AIDS in Tanzania. And I've got some more folks lined up. If anyone has a suggestion for a guest to come on to the Health-Inn Show, please give me a call, send me an email, post it a message on Facebook. I am there, and I will respond to you and follow up. I want to thank Amnon for an awesome show today. Really, let's save the bees together and protect our environment and our own health and our children's health and the future of food, because 90% of food is pollinated by the bees, of our fruits and berries and things. So, and I want to thank all those who are in the chat: Kathy, Dr. Kubushan, Dr. Wakar, Dr. Bob, Gabrielle Silman, Michelle, Yvonne, and anybody else who's popped in and out. These shows are archived, so you can tune in later. I will put it up on homeopathyworldcommunity.com in the group The Health-Inn. So thank you, and many blessings for good health and lots of love to everyone. Bye-bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health-Inn with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. That VidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.